Hi, my name is Charles Stizza, and my presentation for TDC 562 is a discussion on network monitoring in the virtualized environment. So let's talk about how a data center that is VM-centric, I've kind of made this sort of basic diagram of what a VM-centric data center looks like. And what we have here is we have just a what's known in the virtualization world as I'm sure many of you have heard of it, but just in case you haven't, is what actually runs on the physical hardware. And this is the line here. This is the physical world over here, and here's our virtual world over here. What we're actually running VMs on is this thing called a bare metal hypervisor, which is a stripped down operating system which is sufficient enough to give executing virtual machines and provides a software switching environment. And so it's a very lightweight OS. Examples are Citrix Zen Server, Microsoft Hyper-V, and of course VMware's ESXi server. And so basically what we're looking at in the VM world is an operating system which runs virtual machines, and we have what I call the virtual switching world. And so this is literally the virtual switch functions much like you would expect a regular switch to work. It bridges traffic. It can accept VLANs. There are some dissimilarities, but this is a basic template I want to use to give our discussion a bit of context. So we don't need to pontificate on why virtualization is good. You can do a lot more with less in virtualization. Smaller data center footprint means you can it has cooling and also power consumption, much more efficient in terms of power consumption and also cooling. Lots of resiliency when it comes to DR and also server migrations. When upgrading hardware, we can move VMs without having to change the hardware, without having to have any downtime, and not reinstalling operating systems. So some of the challenges that we have in the virtualized world is, whose responsibility is it? Because we now have this software switching world. Is this a server admins or is it network admins? So again, with this innovation, we have the challenge here, and it's a real problem, potentially a real problem, because generally server guys don't know much about networks, and network guys don't know much about servers. So whose responsibility is it? The second thing is performance management. How do we monitor this traffic in the virtualized world? What's the traffic doing? Related to this point too is also there's kind of this ether world created between the uplink. Here's our physical switch right here, and so in this software switching world, the traffic that is within the virtual switch, intra-hypervisor traffic, so traffic between virtual machines, we don't have a lot of insight on what it's doing. So we need to really consider how we approach the monitoring and troubleshooting problems, because tools that would apply to a physical switch don't necessarily apply here in the virtualized world. So of course, the industry has signaled that there are products out there that do, as you would guess, there are products out there that provide a solution for these problems and these challenges in the virtualized data center. So what seems to be a common theme is that the industry indicates that it wants to use existing tools in the virtualized world, don't want to reinvent the wheel, and leverage proven methods to monitor our virtual machine traffic or our software switching traffic. So the four vendor solutions I like to look at are VMware's VDS, the Cisco Nexus 1000V, the Open vSwitch, and also the Cisco Nexus 1010 Prime. And I kind of put these as good, better, and best solutions in relative placement of each other. This is not, of course, science here. This is just my opinion based on their market position and the functionality that you get. So as I mentioned before, major players here. We have Cisco, VMware, and Open vSwitch. I think these are three main, definitely by far and away, this is at least 85 to 90% of the market. So as I mentioned, Cisco 1000V, far ahead of the competition, most widely deployed. But I think a good point to keep in mind is that the market is still relatively immature for this type of solution. So the first solution, as I mentioned, the VMware VDS, or Virtual Distributed Switch, is a software switch running inside ESX or ESXi, and this tool solves these problems because it supports span and NetFlow. So the network administrator gets tools that he's familiar with, and of course NetFlow, familiar with it. This sends traffic statistics to a network analysis module external device. Same with span. Span is slightly less elegant than NetFlow, but they accomplish nearly the same thing. Nice thing about the VDS is it has its own API, which allows for third-party extensions. Here's what the VDI, I'm sorry, the VDS, the configuration, the GUI looks like, and I guess it really looks literally like you'd think a software switch would look like. We have the uplinks here for or this would go to your core network, and this is these links right here are the virtual machine facing links. How I would position the VDS is that historically it's just a marginal upgrade over your basic vSwitch, where there isn't, and this is just a basic software switch where you have almost no functionality except the ability to create VLANs. You can do some things, but this solution up until the most recent version really didn't support much such as NetFlow and span. So I would say that recent version is a good solution, but in prior releases it actually is quite mediocre. The biggest drawback it has going for it is that it lacks a familiar CLI that the network admins are going to want to have in their network hardware. In terms of cost, it's really included with the vSphere Enterprise Plus license, which will set you back about $3,500 up. It's licensed per CPU socket. Next solution, which I think is a very good step up from the VDS, is the Nexus 1000V. Again, it's a software switch. It's actually built on VMware's VDS API. The thing that this really has going for it, and of course it supports the NetFlow, SPAN, SNP, but the thing that this really has going for it is that it runs the Cisco NXOS, so it's a familiar data center switch operating system. This is from the Cisco Nexus switching line, so your data center network admins are going to be familiar with this, and they will be able to jump right in and start programming right away without having to learn a new interface or a new GUI, or they can basically, if they know NXOS, they can figure out the Nexus 1000V. The VDS deployment looks something like this, where we have these things called VEMs, which are virtual Ethernet modules, and VSMs, which are virtual supervisor modules. So the 1000V is a bit of a modular switch model in the virtual world, where we have the supervisor module, which is a central place to program the VEMs, and this is where all of our programming takes place, and it pushes down the config to individual VEM modules. In terms of cost, 1000V sets you back around $800 per CPU socket. However, it does require the VMware Enterprise Plus licensing, which is around $3,500 per CPU socket. So you need to add this cost on top of Enterprise Plus licensing. A good thing to keep in mind: this is a well-supported product by Cisco. Of course, Cisco, in terms of the switching market, I believe they're somewhere in the area of 65 to 70%. So, who better than to get a software switch from than Cisco? Realistic deployment, 4-server deployment with 2 CPUs, around 35 grand. Fourth solution we'll look at is called the Open vSwitch. This is a open source virtual switching solution for the virtualized world. It supports a lot of cool features: SPAN, SFlow, NetFlow. It runs on the most wide variety of platforms, including Linux KVM, which is Linux virtualization solution, VirtualVox, which is a desktop virtualization solution, Zen, which is Citrix hypervisor. The biggest drawback, I guess, is that it doesn't run on VMware ESX, and this is a pretty big chunk of the market, so that's a huge drawback for it. Open vSwitch, again, supports a lot of features that you would expect on an enterprise level switch. The drawback, another drawback of this is that it is pretty complicated. It's a pretty complicated piece to configure, and you need to be a Linux geek to deal with it. So, what's the cost? What does vSwitch cost? Well, it's quote-unquote free, but in the enterprise, nothing's really free. You need to have a specialized skill set. You need to house the people to support it, and so I guess while it lacks licensing costs, probably you'll spend the costs in terms of maintaining it and deploying it. You need to be uber geeky to configure this. For the enterprise, this is a picture of a CTO, by the way. So I guess for the enterprise, it's a bit of a hard sell, because CTOs tend to like a throat to choke when there's a problem, and if they can't go back to the vendor and get support and fix their network problems, then usually they're not a big fan of that. So, by the way, this is me trying to install this. The last solution, which I consider to be the Cadillac solution, is the Nexus 1010 Prime network analysis module, and this is built on the Nexus 1000V, or I should say the 1000V is built on this. This is a hardware solution that runs the Nexus 1000V VSMs, and also it's called the Cisco Prime network analysis module, which basically put together, this is a virtualized NAM solution for your Nexus 1000V. You deploy the 1010 on these hardware appliances. They should be applied in pairs for HA, for high availability. I guess you can run on one, but Cisco says you should put 2 of these in place for redundancy. A NAM deployment looks like this. Virtual Ethernet modules, again, our Nexus 1010. But we also have the Prime Network Analysis Module virtualized appliance running on this hardware. And so we get all the benefits of a network analysis module for my virtualized world. Or I should say, the virtualized world. The NAM is about 20,000 per hardware piece, so deployed in a pair, it's 40,000. Plus, you need a NAM license, which is 3,000. So it's a little over 50,000. It only runs on VMware right now, but soon it will support Hyper-V. Doesn't run on Citrix or KVM. So the tools you looked at have, again, they're proven methods for monitoring the virtualized world. So far, what seems to be the case is Cisco is pretty far ahead of the competition. I believe other vendors will follow suit, and we will see some more maturity in the market. Right now, though, there's just not a lot out there. So if you have further interest in this product, you can take a look at these. They have 90-day trials, free NASs, and iSCSI target if you need shared storage to get VMware up and running. And also if you need a free virtualization solution for your desktop, Sun's VirtualBox is pretty good. Anything you want to get further clarification from this presentation, feel free to email me or Gtalk me. I hope this presentation was informative for you, and thank you for listening.